All right, what's going on, everybody? It is Fast Cars, Fast Money. It's me and Crazy Kev this weekend. So we got half of the Fast Money squad this weekend, looking at the Fontana weekend. But this is videos going over the Cup Series at Fontana. But before we dive into that, just a couple of quick things. Really quickly, just want to say thanks to everyone who watched the video last week and all the new followers over on Twitter and YouTube that we got. The video was the most viewed video that we've put out yet. It had the most likes. We gained over triple digit followers on Twitter. I think we're up to like 270 subscribers on our channel. The goal is to get to 1,000. So if you're new to the subscription list, thank you. And if you're watching this, you haven't subscribed yet, hitting that button means a lot because that's our goal, is to get up to 1,000. So I just wanted to say that you got a lot of positive momentum and got us super excited for the rest of this season and what's to come. So enough of that. Let's talk about the Cup Series at Fontana. So Kevin and I, let's go through the kind of race preview and initial thoughts like we did on the Daytona video. So this track is very different than Daytona. It's still a large track. It's a 2-mile oval, but the cars are not going to be drafting like they were in a pack, and you can still draft off of one another, but you're not going to be inches apart from one another the entire race. It's also when I think the oldest track surface left on the schedule. So what does that mean? Well, tires are going to be really important. So there's not going to be a lot of grip. There's going to be a lot of high tire wear. You're going to see a lot of comers and goers. Anytime cars come to pit road, the driver is going to be screaming for tires. Tire management is a really important aspect of this race. Because of COVID, we didn't race here since 2020. So it's been a couple of years. So if you're looking at data, just know you have to go all the way back to 2020. And even then, it's a completely new car. So really going to rely on practice and qualifying for that weekend. But do you want to go over some of the other points on here, Kev? And I can jump in if you need me to.
Yeah, so being a 200 lap race, it's not going to be like Daytona where there's a new leader every other lap as the draft comes and goes. So dominator points are going to be extremely important this week, or not, maybe not extremely important, but more important than they were last week for sure. Obviously, they're probably going to come from the first two rows because qualifying is going to mean a little bit more this week with the draft not being a factor. So you're actually going to want to pay attention to those top few drivers this week. Then that top 10 is going to be a lot more important this week than it was last week. And I know this race tends to usually run green for a while just because it's a little bit wider, faster. They're not on top of each other. The only time we might really see caution is someone brushes the wall or what have you and blows a tire. We'll see cautions, but it's probably going to be a lot more long runs this week than there were last week.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that because if last week it was all stack to back, and this week it's almost the opposite. Like you actually would want to be rostering a lot of drivers who are starting further towards the front of the pack, just because, like Kev says, the race usually goes green. So, driver is going to be going laps down. So if you can somehow roster guys who are staying on the lead lap or in position for the lucky dog, like those are the drivers you're going to want to try to roster and try to find value in. Even though it's a big 2-mile track, it's actually pretty hard to pass here. So usually restarts are pretty crazy. You're going to see everyone fan out 4 or 5, maybe even 6 wide on the track. And then usually after a couple laps, everyone kind of settles in line and more or less rides along unless someone's car is just significantly better than everyone else's. But if you look at data from all the previous races, like dominator points weren't really a concern for us last week, but this week you do want those dominator points. So you want the guy who's leading the laps. You want the guys who's, picking up the fast laps. And historically speaking, the main dominators have usually come from those first 2 rows. So why is that important? Well, it's important because we don't know where these guys are starting yet. So you have to look at practice, you have to look at qualifying, and most likely, pick a driver or maybe even 2 drivers in the top, 2 rows and plug them in and kind of rely on them to be your lap leaders and the guys who are running your fast laps. And then hopefully you compare them with guys who either get to stay on the lead lap or pick up positive place differential. I think lineup construction wise, I think that is kind of the way to approach it this week. So it's kind of hard to tell you like, oh, this play is going to be a dominator, or this is going to be a good place differential play, or this guy's going to stay on the lead lap without really diving into that practice and qualifying data. And that's why things are a little bit different this year than they were last year with COVID, because otherwise we would know where they're starting. But it's nice to have practice and qualifying back, because then you can at least have a general idea of, who has a good car and who doesn't. But any other initial thoughts you want to mention, Kev, before we'll kind of touch on some guys we're kind of, like ones to watch this weekend?
I guess the only other thing I can really mention is, and it's going to kind of be true all year having this next gen car, is we have previous data. We know kind of who's run well here before, who hasn't run here before or well here before. But this new car is kind of a big game changer. We saw it with the qualifying and lap times at Daytona. There's a lot tighter than they had been years before. So, be a good idea to reference previous data to know who kind of knows where the lines are on the track, how to run it better. But I wouldn't make that kind of your savior just because the lot's going to be different. Some drivers are going to get this new car quicker than others, and it's going to change a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to more or less maybe differentiate maybe from like the casual NASCAR fan who's just looking at track history and previous data. And I think it's still important to take those into consideration, especially if you're looking at maybe practice and qualifying data this weekend and you're maybe in between two drivers. Okay, rely on the practice and qualifying data from this week, but then if you need additional support to maybe make a decision between 1, 2, or maybe 3 guys, then maybe you can dive into track history. If you can see like, hey, driver A is significantly better at this track than driver B, even though they had good practice and qualifying times this weekend, because of that track history, I'm going to rely more on, driver A. So I think that's a good, differentiators. A lot of people just look at track history and plug it in, where, we haven't really had practice and qualifying for the last couple of years. So take advantage of it before, maybe people realize, what gems of information they have right available at their hands. So we highlighted in purple some guys, not that we're necessarily, high interest on, but just some initial thoughts when the slate first came out of like guys we're kind of curious about, we're kind of curious to look into a little bit more, kind of ones to watch this weekend. So our interest levels, all the information here is blank, but we'll update this and we'll post it on Twitter. It's at Fast Cars FM. So if you're like, hey, normally you guys upload all this information and you go over it on the video, well, we're still posting that information. We just don't post it until the morning of the race day. It's usually after qualifying. So I'm going to let you go through some of these guys, Kev, but is there any guys you want to touch on that we have kind of highlighted for a reason?
Obviously we can start with the elephant in the room and Kyle Larson. He obviously is dominant last year. His price kind of shows that, can pretty much run any track, any style of racing. He just can do it all. Ran good last week, didn't necessarily have the best week, but that's just the nature of Daytona. So obviously he's going to be one to watch. You're going to pay for him, but if he qualifies well, starts in those first 2 rows like we're talking, I could very easily see him being an early dominator, and definitely one to watch in this race. And then I'll touch on Kyle Busch as well real quick. Just couple years ago when we first started the pandemic and had that racing, Kyle struggled. Last year he started to get his mojo back, I think, with this new car, and just having that confidence back. The changes they've made on his team and in the organization have helped him significantly. Comes in, even though he's in kind of that same price range as Kyle Larson, he's $1,200 cheaper, which is a huge break there. And I think you're still getting one of the better drivers in the league. And yeah, he typically runs his style track pretty good. Probably another one to watch depending on where he qualifies. And yeah, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, so I think it really is just going to come down to like, okay, when it comes to the lineup construction, you probably want 2 dominators in your lineup and then 4, place differential plays or finishing potential plays. And it's really, I just want to play 6 guys that can finish on the lead lap, and ideally rostering 2 guys who I'm confident who can get up front and lead laps. And then maybe if I can get a 3rd guy in there, it's like, I don't know if he's really going to get up there, but I could see him getting up there. That's really the way I want to approach it. So I don't really know, who those dominators are going to be right now, but I'm going to look at practice. I'm going to look at qualifying. I'm going to look at kind of who starts within the first couple of rows. And I'm going to try to target two of those drivers most likely, or if I really feel high on one versus the others, I'm going to really target him and then look for my second dominator elsewhere. So, initially I'm like, oh, I think Larson's going to be good this week. I think Kyle Busch is going to be good this week. But again, it's kind of hard to tell. So some other guys we're interested in. I think Truex will be interesting to watch. He's always good at, managing tires. And again, this is a high, tire wear track. And I think Truex and the experience that he has is going to help him a lot, especially he usually has a really good long run car. Again, I know it's a completely different car, but historically speaking, he has a good long run car. And this is a track that normally runs long. Bowman won the last time that we were here. You could argue Redick is going to be really popular this week because of his price. And this is a track that rewards drivers for running up, close to the wall. So I think Redick and Larson are going to be kind of in the same boat, just obviously a huge price differential there. RFK is off to a pretty good year. So I think Buescher is interesting. You also get a nice price discount off of Keselowski, and Keselowski, basically PO'd half the field last week trying to wreck everybody. So I don't know if there'll be a lot of give and take for him. Bubba Wallace with 23XI, I think he's more or less in a JGR, car. So getting almost like the JGR car at $7,000, even though he's not the best at this track, I think is a value play, especially if you're plugging in some of those higher price guys, you're going to need some value plays. And I'll let you talk on maybe some other potential value plays, Kev, down here.
Yeah, I think Cole Custer is a real interesting one for me. When I saw his price come out, he's in, pretty good equipment in the Stewart Haas, and he's the only driver in the field that's running both races this weekend. So he's going to have more track experience this week when no one's really had any track experience here the last couple of years. Comes in and that real cheap price range will help you maybe get, Larson or Kyle, some of those more expensive guys to help try to get those couple dominators we were talking about, or whoever else it might be based off some of the data we see coming in. So that's Custer becomes an interesting one for me, just at that price point, having all the time on the track this week, and he's in good equipment. Might not be the greatest driver, but he's not bad compared to everyone else around his price range. So that's an interesting one for me. And then I like Corey Lejoy too. Same thing, comes in a decent price range in maybe not the greatest equipment, but not the worst equipment either. Comes in real cheap. I know we kind of leaned on him a good bit last year from just that, he's probably not going to win you the race, but he's probably going to stay on the lead lap. And, like Andrew said, we're just trying to get a couple guys or, 6 drivers to stay on the lead lap here, move up a little bit. And I think depending on where LaJoy qualifies could, be another one of those guys.
Yeah. And it'll be tough. Like this is such a historically a long green flag type of track. So it's hard as you go down lower on the slate to, okay, what are guys who I think can, pass a lot of guys, or if there's good place differential. So sometimes it's obvious, like, oh, this guy starts really far back and I can see him finishing 25th or something. And it's like, okay, everyone's going to play him, but we'll post more or less our picks, as the week progresses. So again, this is more just a kind of like initial thoughts, lineup construction type of video. So hopefully you guys find this helpful. If you do, let us know in the comments below, what you like about this, what you don't like. We're trying a little bit of a different format this year, just given the kind of practice and qualifying situation. But yeah, that'll do it for the Cup Series video. Our Xfinity Series videos up live on YouTube as well. No truck race this weekend, so just Cup and Xfinity. But good to have Kev back this week. And yeah, best of luck, everybody.